Gordon, our township attorney, reviewing with us the various options that a township has. Not every combination of them, but just the basic options we have. Mr. Gordon, could you review that for us briefly?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be happy to. So with the legalization of cannabis products in the state of New Jersey, after the referendum in the last general election, the legislature authorized municipalities to determine for themselves what specific types of licenses they wanted to authorize, how many of those licenses they would authorize, and if they authorized any of them, where those licenses were to be located. There are 6 different licenses that are authorized by the legislation, and we need to decide as the governing body for the township how we're going to handle those issues. The 6 different types of licenses are a cannabis cultivator's license, which is exactly what it sounds like. Those are the facilities that would be involved in growing and cultivating cannabis products. There is a cannabis manufacturer's license. Those facilities are involved in the making, preparation, and packaging of cannabis items. There is a cannabis wholesale license. Those are for facilities involved in obtaining and selling cannabis items for later resale by other license holders. There is a cannabis distributor's license. That's a license for businesses that are involved in transporting cannabis products in bulk from one licensed cultivator to another licensed facility. There is a cannabis retailer's license. That is the license which authorizes sales of cannabis items and supplies directly to the consumer. And there is a cannabis delivery license. That is the 6th and final license. Cannabis delivery licenses are essentially couriers who would take an order from a consumer, have it fulfilled by a licensed retailer, and deliver those products to the consumers. The legislation authorized municipalities to take action within 180 days. That deadline is August 21st of this year. And the action that is time sensitive is if a municipality intends to prohibit any of the cannabis licenses which are authorized. If the municipality does not take action in that time period, then authorized license holders as licensed by the state will be provided licenses in the industrial zones for those more industrial types of uses, and as a conditional use for the retail purchase in the commercial and retail zones. If the governing body, if any municipality does not take action in that time period, the state will authorize those licenses, and you will be left with those license holders for a period of 5 years. At the end of that 5-year period, the municipality then would have the ability to enact local legislation at that point, but any previously granted license holders and operations would be grandfathered in. What you don't need to do by that August 21st deadline is to actually develop the zoning and specifics of where the authorized license holders would be permitted to go. That action can be taken after the August 21 deadline, but if the municipality intends to bar or authorize licenses, it should be done so that you maintain some control by that August 21 deadline. Mayor Womack, those are the broad outlines of the decision that faces the governing body. And at your direction, we have had these town hall type meetings to get the input of the public so the municipal decision makers can make an informed decision. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Anyone who's here tonight should be aware it's not a meeting where we're going to listen to things and then vote tonight. We're trying to gather information, see what people want, don't want, and council and myself will be listening tonight, hopefully, and not doing a lot of the talking. But that said, any comments from the council president or any member of the council before we open? Mr. Gordon, would you do the honors of helping us go down the list and make sure that we try to recognize everyone who wants to be heard tonight?
Sure, Mayor. I did neglect to inform the members of the public and the members of the governing body about the financial implications should licenses be authorized. The legislation does authorize a 2% transfer tax on sales and other transactions, and a 1% transfer tax on specific items that are by a wholesaler. Having said that you now have the issue before you. The first person that I have noticed, and as shown on my screen, is shown as B. B, I can't give you more of an identifier. It might be Beach for Life. If you want to speak, please unmute yourself and give the governing body what you wanted to talk about. Thank you. The next person that I have is Rich Germosen, Germosen. Mr. Germosen, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person that I'm showing is Richard Klughurst. Mr. Klughurst, forgive me if I have messed up the pronunciation of your last name. If you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself, which I see that you have done, and the floor is yours.
You're not the first one to have trouble with my last name. I missed the first session. I tried to log in, but I don't know whether I had a bad address for it. I personally am in favor of at least the retail and perhaps delivery licenses. I don't know all of the ins and outs, but certainly the township could use the revenue, and I personally don't see any significant downside to it. But again, I don't know what the conversation is in the first meeting.
To be clear with you, sir, one of the reasons we're having this second meeting is that the notices were somewhat confused on the first meeting. We wanted to make sure everyone, like you, had a chance to be heard, and the conversation went both ways. People expressing similar to what you just said, and others expressing that they didn't think it's a healthy thing for the township. So we appreciate your contribution.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. The next person that I'm showing as listing as wanting to speak is Lefty Grimes. Mr. Grimes, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself and say what you wanted to say.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. We very much appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Mayor. The
Mayor-
next
Mayor,
person.
I'm sorry, Ron. Mayor, can
Go
I
ahead,
just ask
Councilman Davis.
Mr. Grimes a question?
Shoot, Councilman Davis.
I don't know if he's still on, but I know he was talking about a number of taxes. I think he had said there was a tax on wheelchairs and things of that nature. Did I?
I
Mistake-
believe Thank you,
Thank
sir. Thank you, Councilman Davis.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mayor.
Mr. Gordon, if you could just answer, of these 6 items, I don't see that it's specific. Can you tell us which one of these would apply best to Mr. Grimes' situation? I know that they talk about dispensaries, but I don't see the word dispensary per se.
So I can give you the broad strokes, Councilman Andrews. I can't speak specifically to Mr. Grimes' statements. So municipalities would be permitted to allow a transfer tax of 2% of each sale by a cannabis cultivator, 2% of receipts from each sale by a cannabis manufacturer, 1% on receipts from sales by a cannabis wholesaler, and 2% from the receipts of each sale by a cannabis retailer.
My
Those are the
question,
authorized
my
taxes.
question was more related to the licensing. I see retailer, distributor, wholesaler. I don't see there's a lot of talk that's been out there. In fact, I think I saw one yesterday in the medical dispensaries. And I think that's something that Mr. Grimes would like to see, in a sense, from his comments, that it would be something that would make it more available to people that need it on a medical basis. You know which one of these 6 licenses applies to that?
Based upon what I'm seeing, these are for recreational only. The legislation, to my knowledge, doesn't impose this specific transfer tax on medical marijuana. It's a different issue.
Mayor Womack, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you write a letter, or as a town we were advocated to get a license for a medical dispensary?
Yes, about a year, 18 months, 2 years ago, we did send a letter saying we were, at the time when only medical dispensaries were under consideration, we sent a letter saying that's something that we would keep an open mind for.
Okay, so, and we haven't heard back anything on that.
Although not hearing back could be our answer on that, but that's right. We did send that. We didn't get anything back, and there was no award to any applicant in North Brunswick for a medical dispensary.
Councilman Andrews, I'll look further into the question on what the taxes are on medical marijuana, but that's not the issue that's before you this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Gordon?
The next person I'm showing on my screen, Mayor, is identified as Laura. Laura, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
I have nothing to say at this time.
Thank you. The next person I am showing as on my screen, Mayor, is Hugh Giordano, UFCW Local 152. Mr. Giordano, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Looks like he unmuted.
Yes?
You hear me okay?
There you go. We hear you now.
Okay,
Mr.
great. My name is Hugh Giordano, and I'm a union representative for the United. Yes.
Oh, you were coming in and out. Maybe it's a little bit of a delay.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I'll try to move and see if it's better. Okay, how's that?
Good.
Okay, great. My name is Hugh Giordano, and I'm a union representative for the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, UFCW, and we are a national labor union that represents cannabis workers from seed to sale, both medical and adult use. We are also a national labor union of 1.3 million hardworking families, and we're the official cannabis labor union under the guise of the AFL-CIO. We currently represent medical workers here in New Jersey, and I just wanted to speak about the kind of good jobs that are created from cannabis jobs. These jobs are living wage jobs because New Jersey has some of the strongest labor language in cannabis. They come with a living wage, healthcare, sick time, vacation, dental, retirement. These are real careers. And these folks that work in our facilities have degrees in botany, horticulture, chemistry. Even in the dispensaries, in the retail side, we have pharmacists. So these are really educated jobs that attract young, educated families that are going to create an economic boom for not only your area, but the surrounding area too. Because when good jobs pop up, that's when the people start coming into the area. I'd like to suggest 2 things. The city of Bayonne passed an ordinance about 2 months ago, and that ordinance has application fees, renewal fees, but it also has a merit-based application system. So it looks at things such as environmental standards, security standards, community standards, local ownership, things that matter to protect the workers and the citizens that live in the area, and it's important. And I would suggest the city of Bayonne as a good model ordinance for allowing facilities, because if they're going to come in and get your talent from your citizens, then they should be good employers and be good neighbors. I would also like to suggest that you visit one of our facilities. So if you would like to visit the Garden State Dispensary in Woodbridge, I'd be more than happy to take you, the entire body. I know there's only so many people that come at one time because of quorum, but the chief of police, whoever feels comfortable coming, they can come and see the facility. It's a seed to sale facility, so you see the whole process. That way, you don't have to hear from other people. You can see it for yourself. So, if you're interested, please let me know. And again, my name is Hugh Giordano. Thank you.
Hugh, my assistant is named Janice Larkin. If you wouldn't mind calling her at the mayor's office at your convenience and leaving the contact information where if any member of the governing body or someone else who's relevant in town would like to go up to the Garden State Center, I'd appreciate it.
That sounds great. I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Mayor. The next person I'm showing is Tanya. Tanya, Tanya. Tanya, please, you wanted to speak. Please unmute yourself and you have the floor. Thank you. Next person I'm showing is Mary Ann Cafferty. Ms. Cafferty, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor.
No questions. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
And Mr. Gordon, I know Mary Ann Cafferty, and she always has something to say. That can't possibly be the real Mary Ann Cafferty. Only kidding, Miss Cafferty. Only kidding.
Thank you, Mayor. The next person I'm showing is S. Malvone. S. Malvone, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor.
Hi, no questions or comments at this time, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching in, Ms. Malvone. I know you're a member of our zoning board who is interested in these things. Thank you for participating.
Thank you, Mayor. The next person I'm showing is David Newkirk. Mr. Newkirk, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor. Thank you. The next person I'm showing, Mayor, is Terry M. Galen. Ms. Galen, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor. Thank you. The next person I'm showing, Mayor, is Stephen Domino Sr. Mr. Domino, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and the floor is yours.
Well, good evening. I just want to say I'm in favor of both recreational and medicinal marijuana. I think the town should have a dispensary because you can go anywhere else you want to get the items if you want. So I have to say thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next person I'm showing is Jerry. Jerry, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself, which I see you've just done. The floor is yours. Jerry, did you want to speak? Okay, thank you. The next person I'm showing, Mayor, is Donna Joseph. Ms. Joseph, if you wanted to speak, unmute yourself and the floor is yours. I see that you've unmuted yourself, but we cannot
Hi,
hear
good
you.
evening to everyone. I'm here just trying to get information, and I do agree. I'm in favor for recreation and medicinal in North Brunswick. Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't know. I'm
Thank you.
here. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. What I'm okay. I want to say that I am for this.
I think we did get your comments, ma'am, that you're in favor of it. You got some feedback going there. Maybe if you can stop that. Sometimes if you have both your phone and a computer on, that'll happen. So if you mute one of them, maybe that'll help. We'll go on to the next person, but we'll come back to you. Will you mark that as a return, Mr. Gordon?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next person I'm showing on my screen, Mayor, is Sarah. Sarah, if you wanted to speak, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm a little late in coming into this meeting, but from what I'm getting, this is about the use for marijuana for medicine and recreational. I want to say that I am for medicine, I am okay with that, but I am definitely not in agreement with using marijuana for recreation purposes. I am a mother, and I think about our children, and I think about this leading to further drug use. It is right now, we have such a problem with drugs in our even elementary schools, okay? And we're thinking about passing something where we're going to make it more easier for kids to possess drugs, because that's what it is. Because you can call it recreational, but if you're going to be using it as medicine, that's a drug, correct? And there's statistics that show that this leads to further use of other drugs, harder drugs. Who's going to be keeping stats about, in our own town, about the possibilities of our children becoming more addicts? Are we going to increase the number of police officers that we have here in the town? I mean, who's going to be looking into, what about the DARE program? What is going to be teaching our children now at the DARE program? That it's okay now for marijuana to be used? Is this being passed in our town? And these dispensaries, where are they going to be located? And where can anybody who is quote unquote adults going to be able to buy the recreational marijuana? Because as you well know, the kids get their hands on this stuff, right? So how is the town going to be addressing all these issues?
If that is your question, then those are things that the town would indeed need to address through the zoning laws that would apply to the marijuana businesses, whether they be dispensaries or otherwise. And you're very correct in pointing out those are all things the township would have to take into account.
Yeah, saying that when you say the zoning enforcers, are you talking about, for example, when we call the municipality building because a neighbor has very loud music, and we have to call that zoning person or the police department? So is that what you mean by zoning enforcer?
Well, those people enforce the zoning, but the zoning board or the Board of Zoning Adjustment or our planning board, Councilman Andrews is our representative to the planning board. I know the vice chairman of the zoning board is listening in. If we said as a general principle, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gordon, if we said as a general principle, we would allow these businesses to come, then the next step would be for the zoning and planning board, for the council's approval or with the council cooperation, would have to decide, okay, if we have them, where could they be and where would we allow them to be and where would we forbid them from being? So that's what I'm referring to, is that kind of zoning decision about where they could and could not go.
And how many would this be? How many of these stores? Is the town? Is that another question that needs to be approved by the zoning board? How many would be allowed in the town? to set up their stores?
Mayor, if I may. So, the regulatory process, if the municipality were to decide that it wanted to authorize any type of license in the municipality, the zoning would be enacted through local legislation to say where these types of facilities should go and how many of them there can be, and whether or not they can be close to each other or close to a school or close to a church. Those are the zoning decisions that would need to be made if the governing body decides that it wants to authorize any of these licenses. So those are the details, but the first decision is, are you going to permit any license holders in North Brunswick?
Now, I see that you have to be 21 in order to purchase the marijuana as in recreation form. This is tricky because yes, that marijuana is in our schools, period, right? So if they can get it even now, how can the town not think that there will be an increase of usage by our youth by opening up now stores where they can just go and pretend that they have fake IDs, right? They have fake IDs and they go and they buy them.
I got that notification.
I'm sorry?
If you're not speaking, be sure to mute yourself. And Sarah, again, you've made a point that we have to take into consideration through consultation with the police department and what other facts we know of whether authorizing legal marijuana will make it worse in the town. And there's certainly, we're certainly not off base to think it could.
So just so I'm straight with this, my last question is then, so this was just a meeting. So the next step is what exactly?
In this meeting, we're listening to residents, people like you, to try to get your feel. The council is continuing on its own, each member on their own, and some of us as a group. And through consulting with Mr. Gordon, we're trying to learn about the implications of if we do this or if we do that, what does it mean? And then at an upcoming council meeting, a regular council meeting where we will be taking action, we will have to vote to decide whether we reject marijuana entirely, whether we allow some kinds and reject other kinds, or what we want to do. So there will be another meeting.
My name is Lefty Grimes. I'm with sativacross.org. We're a 501c3 here in
This is actually not the public hearing on the ordinance. That will be later in the evening. So we are going to reserve your comment for when we actually have the public hearing on that ordinance. Mr. Grimes, you will have your opportunity to raise that when we are at the public hearing. That's the opportune time to discuss an ordinance and the merits and the, if you don't support the ordinance, that's fine, but this is public comment. So when we have the public hearing, that's your time to raise that issue. All right. Ms. Ray, anyone else?
Municipality or anywhere does authorize that they are going to have a dispensary and they have a delivery service, or if there's a delivery service somewhere around us, no matter what we vote, people in North Brunswick can still call and get deliveries. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you, sir. You can go right ahead, Mr. Gordon.
So I believe that the next person, at least on my list, on my screen, is showing as Nan, but we may have already heard from Nan. Nan, if we haven't heard from you before, please unmute yourself and you have the floor. Thank you. Next person I'm showing, Mayor, is Claudia Fusaro. Ms. Fusaro, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good evening.
Well, I'm not sure who that is, but it's not Claudia Fusaro. So if it's not you, mute yourself.
She's on twice, so yeah, you need to mute one, thanks.
Mute one of them.
Okay, there's one muted.
Try again, Claudia. Mute one of your devices.
Okay, can you hear me now? All right. I tried. Okay, I give up.
Claudia, I'm going to email you my cell phone number. You can call on that. We can get your comments that way while we go to the next person, okay?
Thank you, Mayor. The next person.
She can also type in on the chat.
Next person I'm showing, Mayor, is Stephen or Stefan. Stephen, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor. Thank you. Showing a Carlo as my next person, but that may be the council president.
That would be me, Ron.
Sorry.
I'm good. No, Ron, I'm good. I'm listening like I should be.
Good. The next person that I'm showing is Marina Rebman. Ms. Rebman, if you wanted to speak, you have the floor.
Yes, hi, my name is Marina Rebman, and I'd like to tell you my journey with medical cannabis, medical marijuana. Excuse me. Between the ages of 1 and 4.5, I had a bunch of surgeries on my leg because I was born with a birth defect. And this is when my PTSD started, with doctors and being alone in big, scary places. I was in a major hospital in New York City, and I had to have major surgeries on my lower left leg. And back then, your mother or father or anyone wasn't allowed to stay over. So just picture being a 1, 2, 3, and 4-year-old, seeing your parent walk away from you. And yes, the nurses were very kind, but I wanted my mom. And then I had to have surgery. And then being wheeled inside the operating room. And you be okay. Well, it wasn't okay. It's going to be because you woke up with pain on your leg, and all out of it. You were like in a fog because of all the medications they gave you. And I couldn't even bring in my stuffed animal like they allow you to do now. And yes, like I said, times are different. And then in 2017, I was diagnosed with cancer. They tried every single medication for me not to get sick. Because of the heavy duty chemo, within 3 weeks, I lost 50 pounds because I couldn't get my medicine because I had to wait for the card. And that's another challenge that people in medical cannabis is waiting for our cards. It took me a month to get my card. As soon as I got my card, I started feeling better. I was able to take my medicine, eat. I was able to live. I was able to walk. My oncologist used to tell me, before you see me, before you have a treatment, go smoke in the parking lot. I want you to be nice and stoned. What doctors say that? I have such PTSD and anxiety from doctors. Majority of them will say, yeah, please come stoned. Please medicate before you see me. You know, people say, oh, you can go to New Brunswick to get your medication. But if you're disabled, it's another payment. It's another charge. What if you don't drive? You need to take Uber or Link. And that's horrible because that's another, we could just about afford our medicine. And then you say, well, there's delivery. That's another charge for the disabled. Then you say, well, Access Link is a little cheaper. No, Access Link is horrible. You have to call a day ahead of time, and you don't even know if they're going to be going in that section. Somebody was talking about the security. Hugh Giordano, please talk to him. He's wonderful. He knows all about the security in the dispensaries. There have been 24/7 cameras hooked up to the New Jersey State Police. They have armed retired police officers working at the dispensaries. The security is better than the banks. The security is better than the pharmacies, which hand out opiates, which are highly addictive. When I had to have a surgery, it was 6 hours. It was horrible. No matter what they gave me, the medicine, I was throwing up. I was violently getting sick because of the opioids they gave me. If I was allowed to take my medicine, I know I wouldn't have been able. I would have been better. And then you have psychiatrists, all sorts of doctors who prescribe this medical wonder drug, medical cannabis. You have psychiatrists who prescribe it. You have 64 psychiatrists in the state of New Jersey that prescribe it. One of them is in your town. You even have a medical internist prescribe medical cannabis for patients who live in your beautiful, loving town. So I don't see why you'd want to hurt people and send them out to another town where they don't have the money. So just really please, and if you have any questions, please ask them open. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those comments. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And once again, please ask Hugh Giordano about the security, and please take him up on his offer. He's wonderful.
Thank you, Mayor. The next person I'm showing is C as in Charles, M as in Mary. If you want to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor.
Thank you. No questions at this time.
Thank you. Next person I'm showing is Mr. Mussman. Mr. Mussman, you're on. Please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Hello, and thank you very much. My name is Martin Mussman from North Brunswick, and I would like to speak in favor of this. I have many friends and family members who have required medical marijuana, and I do know people who have used it recreationally. And I would just like to say that in repute to some people, while it is true that cannabis is addictive, there are very little, if none, studies that say that it is a quote-unquote gateway drug. In fact, there are studies from, for example, Japan, where it's really not available, that says that, for example, 83% did not use marijuana before going on to something else. Fact of the matter is, if someone's going to take a drug, they may start with one and go to another, but one does not mean another. But that is beyond what's going on here. The question is, we have the law. Do we sell it in our town? And I would just say, we sell liquor. We sell cigarettes. Those kill a lot of people every year. Cannabis does not. We have people that need the relief from cannabis, and we have people that enjoy it. These aren't bad things. And quite frankly, all of the comments that we've had about security are correct. All of the all of the things that we've had that say this is good for the community actually are correct, looking at all of the states that have done this already. And the only difference is whether or not our town gets the revenue or New Brunswick or someone else does. Do our people have to spend more, or do we give them the convenience? And quite frankly, I would love for our town to get more revenue and give its residents more convenience and, be able to provide a service to the community. And that's just my voice on this as a resident for the last 25 years. So thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, sir.
Next person I'm showing, Mayor, is John. John, if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself, and you have the floor. We're back to Claudia Fusaro, who I believe has already spoken. DJ, who has already spoken, Miss Joseph. I've got a waiting for name 300024 that appears to be either a phone number and is showing on the screen as N/A. If you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor. Thank you. And the last person I'm showing, Mayor, is Mike S. Mike S., if you wanted to speak, please unmute yourself and you have the floor. Thank you, Mayor. I think that's everybody that wanted to speak or that is shown on my screen. I don't believe that I've missed anybody. If I have, I apologize. Just let me know and we will get back to you.
Is there indeed anybody else who wanted to say anything? I know, Claudia, we weren't able to get back to you. Was there anybody else who wanted to throw in their comments tonight? Any member of the council have anything they wanted to add this evening before we adjourn? As I had indicated earlier, the public will have 2 more opportunities to speak on whatever decision the council makes. There will be the opportunity when the proposed ordinance, whichever way it goes, is introduced. And then the night that we vote on it, there'll be a public hearing prior to the vote. Is that correct, Mr. Gordon? I don't want to say something that's wrong.
So it's mostly correct, Mayor. There is a public portion at every public meeting, but the only public hearing on this particular ordinance, whatever it may be, is on after it's been introduced, on second reading, when it's up for adoption. But at any public meeting, anyone can speak on any issue that is relevant to what they want the council to be aware of.
And I know that each of the council members has a email that you can get to through our website. Their phone numbers, their ability to contact them are all listed on the website, where you can call the township, the mayor's office, and we'll be glad to put you in touch with whatever council person you might wish to speak with. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to close this public hearing meeting?
So moved, Davis.
Second, Socia.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And motion to adjourn tonight.
So moved, Socia.
Second, Andrew.
Second, Samantha.
It's intriguing and certainly worth, for $3 a yard, it's worth trying in the right place.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Mayor.
So if it can be, certainly I'm all in favor of you meeting with Wally, maybe with Paul or John, and picking out a couple neighborhoods, maybe even, Riverwood. That's not necessarily going to follow with the curbing and the other improvements, but,
Oh my God, my microphone was off the whole time. So hurtful. The whole time my mic was off. I'm the worst sound guy in the world. I didn't even realize it. I thought it was the fader, but it was more than the fader. It was something else, and I screwed up. Well, they heard me. Well, you know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to Bedminster now, and I'm going to rip them a new one because they're actually banning the consumption of cannabis in Bedminster. Consumption. So it's violation of the 14th Amendment because you got somebody in court, somebody in court taking an OxyContin pill. That's family friendly. That's lawful. And a disabled war vet using a cannabis pill, tincture, lozenge for this PTSD, he's unlawful. That's a violation of the 14th Amendment. You got two people doing the same thing, two different laws, two different results, but they're doing the same thing. One's a criminal, one's not. One's getting sanctioned, one's not. So yeah, I got a big problem when disabled war vets are being disrespected. So they're going to hear it because they're disrupting the supply chain of medicine to people that are sick. And that's something that they don't even do the Taliban doesn't even do that. The Taliban follows the Geneva Convention and gives our troops medicine, at least. So Bedminster's not even as good as the Taliban. That's pretty sad.
Tell you, having sort of been in the know and understand what it's all about, it was unclear to me what we were supposed to do with that sheet. So I'd like to reach out to PSE&G to see if they could have a little bit more.
Okay, I'll give you the contact for PSE&G. And this is an example. So,
all right, so they have a cannabis ordinance. We're going to talk about it soon. I'm sorry. Here, you want me to make it funny? Here, we'll have some fun with these guys. Here, hold on.
My neighborhood certainly didn't have it before the steeplechase was installed.
And then they brought the line up. They will bring it. PSE&G will send gas service, but they need to know the BTUs so they can assess whether or not they're going to charge, right? Because if you're bringing a gas line in, 600 yards for one house, and that house doesn't use a whole lot of gas.
It's less boring like this.
They're completely understand. So, I get that. So they have to essentially amortize the revenue over a 10-year period. And if there's enough usage, and then they'll do it. So and Robin and I had those initial meetings with PSE&G, and we said, well, can we do it by houses? I'm like, well, it's houses are nice, but we really need.
I don't know. I just like this.
Right.
I mean,
It's
we
a
can do
little
Darth
bit of a
Vader.
chicken and the egg going
We can do
on.
it this way too.
Because the residents are likely going to say, well, I'll reconvert if I know that it's not going to cost me that much. Yeah, exactly. PSE&G can't tell you what's going to cost you until they know who wants to convert. So somebody's got to give. And that's why I'm just trying to break that logjam and maybe they can give me a little more information. And it could be on, what do people want to switch, right? So do they want to switch their heaters? That's good. That's better than your stove. Your stove is good, but it's not going to be as good as your heat. Right.
It's good.
So that's one of the things that PSE&G wants to know. So that's why they're looking at the BTU consumption and the elements that the residents want to switch over to. So it's and trust me, this was a series of meetings that.
Trust me, he says. Trust me. While he bans medicine for sick people, he says, "Trust me."
So we've been trying to push them further because there are those neighborhoods, just like Bedminster Village, where Funnily is out there, and we hear from the real estate brokers that having gas is going to increase value, right? Whether it does or not. But certainly that's the conventional wisdom out there. So if we can help people do that, get rid of their oil tanks, convert to
Oh, you put me to sleep like this. Here, let's do this.
One of the neighbors, one of the neighbors in the area from Berkshire responded and said that the line's already in. And people have already opted in and opted out. So that was news. So it's just, I just want to, if you give me the contact information. It's similar. Like, we didn't know that there's a stub of a line that comes into Ski Hill. Right. Now, Ski Hill is a big old circle. Right. So you've got maybe 28 houses that you might take advantage of it if it was brought further down or completed the whole road. And I could see, one of the first questions the resident's going to have is, what does it cost to tap in? Right? I don't have that information, so I want to be able to have that kind of information.
Does it cost in Bedminster?
But people need
When
to know
you've
in
been
essence,
medicine.
10 grand, 2 grand, 20 grand. I'm going to give you the contact information.
Why do you hate
from our
disabled
HR
vets
over
so
at,
much in Bedminster?
And the direct connect from the house is something that the contractors do. So that's something that the resident has to coordinate.
Why don't you have compassion in your little town?
But still, that actual connection goes back to the contract.
You can make people happy when they're feeling
That's
down.
what they may know about, or maybe you can ask Gina, she might be able to tell you. Did they bring it to the house, not just to the property line? Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Did you convert?
I haven't connected yet, but we're in the process. What? What'd you say?
Huh? And literally injected to the house.
Oh, God. Lord help us.
Yeah, that's right.
We can't hear.
But then it's kind of funny because I think there was a grant that as long as you reached a certain number, it was free. If you were slightly over, slightly under, it wasn't quite clear. But some people, well, now it's going to cost you a couple $1,000. But they
I think they work with the town and everyone I know got it to the house for free.
Good. That's great. Thank you, Kevin. All right. Perfect. That's all good. Okay. Gina?
I just have just 2 quick updates. I just wanted to.
Everybody know that campus will begin week from today, and training is set up for starting. And also, through Somerset County.
There's still funds available for the emergency rental relief program.
And if anyone has COVID related.
I can't understand you.
Or needs mental assistance, there's almost a little less than $16,000 allotted for Bedminster residents. So it'd be great if anybody needed the help.
Where are we in the agenda?
And I just have an update for old business, but I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Renee?
Thank you, Mayor. A real quick thank you to the Environmental Commission for presenting Bat Night last Friday night. Ethan Gilardi from the Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey presented a slideshow of how bats live, how they're designed, and more importantly, how
Yeah, we're coming up next, I think.
culture. At the end of the presentation, he demonstrated to us the use of the acoustic detector that makes the normally inaudible bat echolocation sound waves audible. It was a full house, including the mayor, of both children and adults, and it seems to be a perennial hit.
Was that the most folks you've ever had at that
That
night?
is.
That was great. You had a great attendance, and Ethan Gilardi was a really good presenter. Very
I
dynamic.
think he's fun, yeah.
Kids
He's a young guy.
really seem to be into it.
Yep.
And some of the folks who weren't kids. Nice turnout, and
We had all ages, shapes, and sizes.
And congrats to you and to Dawn for putting that together.
And to Whit Parker.
And Whit, right.
Let's see. Real quick, I attended on June 10th a meeting of the Communities in Crisis for a conversation with other Somerset Hills leaders regarding the mental health of our community, as well as attitudes and behaviors towards substance use in light of the legalization of marijuana.
Whoa.
CIC is an organization whose goal is to lead and unite communities to reduce the incidence and consequences of misuse of substances through education, prevention, and holistic support in an environment free of stigma. So we split up into group discussions and talked about what kind of programs each of us at the table thought would be important to have. And we had all sorts of teachers, parents, at the program. So they came up with some ideas. about educational programs
She's
for
silly.
teachers and coaches, which I thought was interesting.
She's so
Support
silly.
programs to connect parents and police outreach, just a couple of the ideas. In another month or two, they'll have another roundtable discussion, and I'll bring back whatever information we get from that one. Additionally, the New Jersey Healthcare Quality Institute is having a wellness campaign town hall meeting. And I'll be going to that June 22nd.
That stigma,
And the same
talk
kind
about.
of thing, talking
That
about,
stigma,
the
talk about.
importance
stigma,
of health
talk
and
about.
welfare in our community, particularly in light of the pandemic, as well as with the legalization of marijuana. So I'll attend that and bring back some information that I get from that. And finally,
Bring
on
back
the
more
rest of the
propaganda for ya.
marijuana information, Colin and I attended a special meeting that HVMA held for us. So we got to talk to them, let them know what we were thinking here at Township. And they had similar questions
That stigma.
that the other masters had. We did get a couple questions on the licenses being good sources of revenue, but we suggested them coming to our meeting in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever our next meeting is, and let them bring that up, because that's not something that the Masters Association are gonna be worrying about. And real quick for JVH, we passed the raffle. So they're raffling off the gift card. I think I mentioned this before, to Nattarar, was about $1,400. They're going to limit the tickets to 100 tickets printed, and each ticket will be $20. So it's a nice little fundraiser for JVH, and it's a good chance somebody's going to get that prize. Let's see. So the upcoming programs for JVH will be Weekend Journey. That's October 9th and 10th. The Cantonment Model Opening Night will be on Veterans Day, November 11th. And we're looking forward to the Colonial Christmas this year on December 3rd, 4th, and 5th. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Colin.
Mayor, thank you. I covered the bulk of what Board of Health reviewed last Thursday, but I did want to give a shout out and recognition to Diane Gibson, our retiring board secretary. It was her last meeting, and we wish her well in retirement. And Janine DeLeon, who is currently the land use board secretary, will be filling some big shoes for Diane, but she's very capable, as we all know. So we welcome her to the board, and just want to give Diane special recognition for her contributions these past many years. And that's all I have on Board of Health, Mayor.
Hey, thank you. So I'm just quickly just going to cover land use board. At the last land use board meeting, there was a presentation from the county planning team that goes back to Steve and I, coordinating with them and AT&T and MetLife. It feels like, and it has been years, but this study is now really, it's sort of in the last throes of being prepared in its draft form, and there'll be some public presentations on the zoning for AT&T in the next few months. My recommendation is that we'll probably end up doing a joint Township Committee Land Use Board meeting for when this is ready to be presented in a final public hearing format. And that should probably be later this summer. And just going to end it there and make a quick reference to farmers market. That's it. Okay, so before we get to administrator's report, we're going to move something that we have towards the end of the meeting. We're going to bring it up now, which is the pony farm improvements. So everyone remembers, Marie, if you can come up. So we have a guest from New Jersey Conservation Foundation, Beth Davison, who's our contact there, is on vacation this week, but Marie Newell from NJCF is here to talk about some ideas, and they're not even ideas at this point. It's the plans to move forward with the memorial plaque at the property and to change the look of the well that is really the only remaining improvement at the property. If anyone hasn't driven by, go up there. The pony farm is a beautiful meadow field at this point, and we'll start seeing those warm weather grasses coming in, I'm going to imagine, in a few weeks, right?
Actually, some of them came in immediately. They planted some of them in December, right when the building had been knocked down and needed surface. They said this is perfect timing because it was cold crop to plant them. So you can see that. And the other thing I'm going to mention tonight is the parking.
Right.
So I'm Marie Newell. I actually just moved to Bedminster Township.
Oh, great.
I don't
Well,
live on the house yet, but
Mhm.
I'm at 2005 Black River Road.
Oh,
in Huntersville.
so then you're right near the, you're right
It
near
is a
the
pony farm, not too far away.
So yeah, so I'm renting in Glen Gardner, New Jersey, and so we can,
Well, welcome to Bedminster.
Thank you, I'm excited, and it's been already eye-opening to listen to all the time.
And by the way, your road is getting paved this year.
I don't know if you already have on the. I sent
in a draft that was done by Wayne Lisa, Romsey Mason, stone company, and does work. It's pretty rough. Basically, they want to use the existing driveway that's already there because it already has the stone foundation. They put out red flags to mark out where the parking area is going to be. It's going to be for 3 cars, and it's big enough just for the cars to pull in, turn around, and pull back out. They want to mark off that parking area by just keeping it natural looking, low maintenance, but nice big boulders so that it shows this is the, kind of area of the parking area. And then just have native grasses around it. The donor had kind of wanted picket fencing and had a lot of different ideas, but one, we've had to come to the town, and we've also maintenance issues because we want to keep it simple. We don't want to create more work for the town, but also for the Brady's, and they were, definitely simple, native, natural, nothing ostentatious. So that's where, the donors, landscape architect, and the stone Wayne Lisa came up with the idea of the boulders and just the grasses. So that's the first piece tonight that I wanted to, use the existing parking area where it's flagged and, keep it just very simple.
Yeah, I saw the flags up. I went up there this weekend, saw the flags were in place. It looks like just as it was laid down on the plans. So
I,
it looks
I
good.
drove up a couple months ago and there's plenty of room to pull in and then make a U-turn and come out without taking over half the yard.
Right.
The original plans that were done, and I just want to make this clear, that were submitted were done by Gladstone Design. And they were not exactly on the existing driveway. And we didn't really realize that, they weren't surveyed in. So that's where we were like, what, we need to make sure that, we're using the existing driveway and we're not trying to pinch stairs into, what's there. So that's a clarification tonight on that. Is there any questions remotely or here about the driveway?
Now that driveway you pull in, it's kind of a big square, but there is like an offshoot to the left.
Yeah. We're not going into that area. We want to keep it small from conversations we've had with, the roads department and just simple. So it's square, just like that. What you pull in, it's a square. You pull in and pull out.
Okay.
The one thing I'm going to ask that wasn't clear to me or Beth, and that was that John had talked about putting gravel in there. And I don't know where that stands. Does anyone here know?
No, I thought the additional gravel would come through the donor.
I'm gonna note that.
Because I believe the current, having gone there this weekend, essentially you're just getting weeds coming. Actually, the weeds right now are taller than the red flags that are up there.
Yeah.
So you have to look for the red flags between the weeds.
Yeah, and some of those are the native grasses that he, because he basically spread them through the whole construction site over the parking lot. Okay, so I will look into the gravel and make sure that the donor covers that, okay. The second thing I was gonna talk about was just the well. Thank you, Robin, for putting up a picture because it's worth 1,000 words. So this is the existing well that you see. The thing that you don't notice when you're driving by at 35 miles an hour is it has an octagonal roof. So when Jimmy Brady was out there with Beth, and I think the mayor and maybe John, they wanted to just simplify it. One, it'll be more inexpensive to fix, and they want to do cedar shapes, which are expensive on top. And they said the term that I was given was wonky. So I did take these pictures just so that you could see, and I think there's another picture that shows the roof part, that shows the interior. So it's just the design that was submitted shows basically a V, I don't know the architectural term, but just the V shape down, so it'll just be two sides. So that is going to be one change. The rest of it, though, the white pilings or columns are going to look similar. They're going to take the whole top off. They're going to put the columns back up. They're going to put that V-shaped roof on. It'll be cedar shingles on top. It'll be white painted. Columns will be white. And then they're going to put a plaque with a blue stone that's going to go on the edge. So if you go, so there's 4 of those around. The 3 of them are the same height, but the one closest to the road, which is on the right side of the picture, that's a little lower, and that's where the plaque will go to recognize this donation is made in memory of Jim Brady. So the plaque, which I'll talk about in 2 seconds, will be a basically this blue stone will go down first, and then this plaque will go on.
I'm awake. I'm up. I'm up. I'm awake. I'm awake.
Clean off the stones. I mean, I kind of like the orange, lichen, but they're going to power those down off, and they're going to read.
Oh my goodness! Why'd they switch this?
Repointing. And
Why did they switch this? We were supposed to go next.
Changes, for the well.
I have one just from a safety perspective. Has this well been properly decommissioned? And is it capped in some way?
Now, that was a question that was brought up because we did close the well, existing well on the house, and we were told, I can't tell you tonight.
I'm awake.
I don't know.
I was just resting my eyes. I was resting my eyes. I'm up. I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Isn't that looking down into the well?
That is looking down.
Looking
So I
down
think
into
it's
the
Oh,
well.
no,
70
no.
feet.
No, new.
No,
That's already, so that stone plate is
I'm looking out into the
3
well.
feet down.
Perfect. Okay, that was my question.
And
If
I
I'm
do
in
believe,
Bedminster, I'm in hell.
that John may
I'm
try to pull it up
looking
or stick
down
something
the
down that
well.
hole, and there's nothing down there.
There's no marijuana
So-
in the well.
No one should be falling down that well.
Put some
If you do,
marijuana
you're
in
just
the
going to step
well.
out. Okay.
Good.
I like it so good it smells.
Are there any
Put some marijuana in your wells.
No good from this side. Thank you.
I'm good from here. Thank
All
you.
right.
Check.
Marie, sounds like from our side, it's full steam ahead.
Oh, wait, the plaque. All systems go.
submitted to you, and it basically is going to say in loving memory of
Hi,
James
Keith.
C. Brady.
Good morning,
And
Keith.
that's, 19
This council's putting me to sleep in Bedminster.
Loving stewardship of our countryside.
Is the material like all
It's a bronze
perfect?
material.
Perfect. No, I was just looking over here. It's all metal or good.
And this is all, just everything we discussed has already been discussed with the Brady family, the donor, obviously, and JCF.
Oh,
So
my.
this already
Oh, my.
comes with all their blessings and approvals.
They know the
and
cannabis
since-
people
but
are
since
here.
This is on township
They know
property,
that we're all here waiting to speak,
even though
and
officially
they're
we
just trying to
already-
put us off.
We did that a couple.
They switched
But I
this to the
certainly
beginning.
appreciate,
This was at the
JCF
end of the
coming back
meeting, and they
to
switched it,
us with
so
these details.
typical.
So please proceed.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Ray,
Thank you.
and welcome to Bedminster.
You can't
Ms. Ray,
get no weed
administrative
here.
report.
You can't get no weed
Feels like
here.
all we've been doing lately is interviewing, so that's.
You
really
can't
what I
get no
wanted to
weed
do.
here. You can't get
Sharon
no
and
weed
last week
here.
we Conducted interviews for our DPW general foreman. We've decided to move forward with second interviews this week. So we'll have some dates
Great.
for you towards the end of the week. We also plan on having interviews at the end of this week as well for a full-time administrative assistant to replace Sarah Hausman, who's moving over to finance clerk to replace Diane Gibson and replace me as deputy clerk. So we have a lot of changes happening the first week in July. Also, we have received one more part-time sewer operator.
Keith, are you ready?
Kind of
Are you ready to
extended
get
see
stoned
where
with me,
we're at.
Keith? Let's do it.
We now, I believe,
Keith,
have
let's do it.
6. So
Let's
we
do it.
are going ahead to schedule all of those interviews.
Let's get stoned
as
together.
well.
It's legal. We can do it. If you can't smoke,
And I also
we'll
want to
give you some
just,
oil or some tincture.
Diane Gibson is
Let's do this,
actually
Keith.
retiring next Wednesday.
I've had a lot of people after the first time, and they loved it. A lot of people love it. Most people love it.
So definitely going to be a
But Keith,
huge
I can't
loss
say
for
enough
us.
about Keith's invention. He has a self-sustaining hydroponic unit in Livingston that he gave to Livingston. And this food that they grow at this self-sustaining hydroponic unit is going to be used to feed homeless people.
We have no ordinances to introduce, but we do have 3.
What? You have stuff to introduce.
Yeah, 3 ordinances for public hearing tonight. The first ordinance on is an ordinance appropriating $100,000 for the Capital Road Management Plan. That's ordinance number
Here we go.
2021.
Boys and girls, put on your seatbelts.
This ordinance appropriates $100,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund to the township's road management plan, including but not limited to the reconstruction, repair, and mitigation of roads, draining, and stormwater systems on various Bedminster Township roads.
Keith, did you say
May I
okay?
have a motion
Keith said
to
okay.
open the public hearing on ordinance 2021-009.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Robin.
Okay, so we actually went over this, reviewed this last week, and Doug actually brought to light earlier today that the intention of this is to keep John moving forward with the pavement management plan so that he's ready, willing, and able to pull the trigger on projects as they come up earlier in the season during paving season.
Okay, any questions from the Township Committee regarding the ordinance that we haven't otherwise already covered? Okay, let's open, do we need a motion to open up for public comment?
So moved.
We don't, for public comment?
We
For the
can-
ordinance? Yeah, well, anyway, okay, so we have,
You did when you opened it.
all right, all in favor of opening it for public comment? There you go. Any members of the public have any questions, comments regarding ordinance number 2021-009? That's $100,000 being appropriated to the Capital Road Management Plan. Mr. Ryan, if you have a comment, come on up. Name and address again.
I just want to know, we don't have this like in advance, like.
We do.
We don't know like next year what roads they're gonna be, so they're.
We have a pavement management plan that we didn't have, and actually, so all credit to Committeeman Stevenson for working that up. And actually, it's even on our website. So that there is, I'm not sure where it is. I did find it.
It's on the websites, but no.
It's on the
You
website.
Navigate to DPW, it's right, it should be there.
Yeah, so on DPW, we actually, it's always subject to change. If we find out that we can get a grant, we may move roads around. But it's something that we hadn't had in the past. But it is now, is full transparency. Here are the roads we have in Bedminster, not counting the roads that are managed by the county and state. And here's how they're being prioritized for repaving, and that is based on John Mance. So doesn't necessarily involve us manipulating which roads are going to be done. It's really with John and Paul Ferrero, and that's all listed on the DPW site, DPW part of the website.
And this plan was created prior to the pandemic, which kind
Right.
of delayed everything. So
Right.
it's not, the plan was created right prior to the pandemic,
Yeah.
so everything is a little.
What can I ask today, what roads are actually being paved next spring? So when it's got already, or are they?
There's a queue.
So the answer to your question is no. I can't tell you today what's going to be done, with certainty next year. What I can tell you is the areas that we're focusing on. So for instance, the next two streets that are really in the queue here is your neighborhood and Clucas Brook. Okay, those are the two neighborhoods. Applications are going in with the state to see whether the state will kick in money to help fund those. Brutal honesty, if the state says yes to one, no to the other, that first one where the state's kicking in money, that's going to get done first. But it doesn't mean that the one that doesn't get done gets kicked to the end of the line. Now they're next in the queue. So look, we did Okura this year, we did Revere, we did Sergeant Stoddard, we got Black River Road. Oh, there it is.
And Kevin, if you look over there on the screen, Robin pulled it up and found it on the website.
Successful from the DPW homepage.
I'm just wondering, if we're paving something next March, those bids aren't done, and I know we're saying.
We got it's co-op, Kevin, so it's not everything goes out to bid. So we're a member of the Morris County Co-op, and I can't sit here and preach chapter and verse what it involves, but it avoids us having to go to bid, right? So to your point though, yes, we have to line up contractors, because if I picked up the phone now and said, hey, John, we have the green light, we want to go do Kevin Street. He calls a contractor, they're going to say, yeah, that's funny. I'm busy from now until the end of the paving season. So that's what we're trying to do, is free up money so that off season, we're ready to go on opening day, so to speak, April, whatever, from rain, we're paving. So
the way the budget process works is we don't officially adopt the budget until March or sometimes April. So that means when we then allocate money for that year's paving, we're already, a month into the paving season and contractors are getting booked. So that's why a lot of the paving that you often see gets pushed to either the end of the year or is carried over from ordinance that were authorized in the prior year.
So this is really to start next
Yeah,
year.
this is essentially seed money to have paving ready to go March, April, without having to wait on the 2022 budget being approved.
And just the PS, and the reason why I say I can't tell you now what's going to happen then is because we don't hear from the state as to what they're willing to kick in for until later. The best we can tell you is that we are completely aware of your neighborhood and it is in the queue, ready to go
And
this year, next year.
When would we find out, okay, this is getting done? The week before or?
No. You'll know in advance.
Way prior to that, I would say during the budget session, we would be committed, knowing what we're doing that spring. So months before. But to the extent we get a positive feedback from the county or the state saying, yes, we'll contribute on a mutual aid, it could be several months before. Okay, great. We know, we knew we were doing Black River for a period of time because we had gotten the approval. But again, there's also, we have our own staff. We try, to do very insular and discrete roads that we can one-off and just do on our own. The other ones we're bringing in folks from the co-op. So we want to try to lock them up as early as possible. So there's lead time involved, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
And if you want to look at a road that was.
I am absolutely speaking tonight. They are banning the consumption of cannabis in Bedminster. And I got a big problem with that because you got a 14th Amendment issue. When you have somebody in court that can open up their OxyContin bottle and take a pill of OxyContin, but then the disabled war vet next to them takes out a cannabis lozenge, he is unlawful for doing that. So that is a violation of the 14th Amendment. You got two people doing the same thing, and one's lawful, one's not. We thought we figured this out years ago, but no, we didn't. So now we have a 14th Amendment issue. The attorney for this town should be taken out and just fired. They should take this attorney and make him leave New Jersey, whoever wrote this shit bill. Yeah, it's a shit bill, sorry. You're hurting disabled war vets with this bill, and I want to call them out. And yeah, the C word may come out. Yeah, commie. I might be calling them commies tonight. Actually, the Taliban treats our vets better than Bedminster. At least the Taliban has to give the medicine, according to the Geneva Convention. They're taking away medicine for sick people. They're disrupting the supply chain of medicine for disabled war vets. That's a wartime move, and I want to know who they are at war with.
No, that's just for us then to say, okay,
So yeah, I'm speaking.
So it's really just for us to know how much.
Yeah, we're getting
how much is
contribution.
moving
We're
around.
getting contribution from the state. So Black River, because Black River, Doug talked about some of the priorities that the state looks at. Black River connects Bedminster to Tewksbury and to Washington Township in Morris County. Tewksbury into Hunterdon. So you've got a road that connects municipalities, that gets priority. So when you get to residential properties, it may not get. So one of the things that we're looking to do is there anything that we can do in that application to boost getting funding from the state for your neighborhood or for the Clucas Brook neighborhood? And by the way, Clucas Brook, because it is curbed, that might be something that might be amenable to the slurry.
I actually raised that exact issue and was told it wouldn't be because the condition of the road was so poor. I don't
But you know who you heard
whether
that from. So without
right.
giving
I want-
names,
right.
we know the source of that.
Right.
That's why I think we need to.
Wally
vet
needs to go out, walk that.
Yeah, we
walk
need
the
to
street.
vet that in a different way, because what we're talking about for the grants is just whether or not we get state contribution. That doesn't change the fact that we still have to pave your neighborhood. And it just means that if we're going to pave your neighborhood, that may be our paving project for that year is Riverwood, Wildwood, Tuttle, Bedminster Terrace.
Right. And we could do both if we got funding for one.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we're just trying to get all of our ducks in a row so that we can come and bang stuff out. But the idea again is.
I know this is not a budget, but is curbing a thought in our neighborhood?
Yes.
3 different times.
Right. And curbing was, Hillside did come in with grant money because it connects to 202. Oh, I'm sorry, 206. Actually connects to 206 and 202. And because it has that connection, it did qualify for state. And one of the state requirements is if you're coming in, that they essentially redo and look at the curbing. I didn't even know I was getting curbing. And then one day I found, I came out and like, there's curbing there. Huh, did we ask for that? All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions regarding ordinance 2021-009?
Not seen any other,
If
Mayor.
not, may we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May we have a motion to approve ordinance number 2021-009?
So moved.
Roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Ms. Moreski. Aye. Ms. Fernandez. Aye. And Mayor Jacobs.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, ordinance number 2021-010, an ordinance appropriating $25,000 for street lighting upgrades. Ms. Ray?
Sure. So we discussed this at the last meeting as well. There are streetlights in the hills that we are, that need to be replaced. Currently, we have about 5 or 6 of them at the tune of approximately $4,000 a piece.
Okay. Motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any questions or comments from the Township Committee regarding the ordinance?
No, again,
Okay.
just say for the folks who are tuned in or attending for the first time, that the intent here is to ultimately get all of the new fixtures, uniform, but we recognize that, with the turnover, you're doing them a little bit at a time. There may be a period of time where we're going to have different types, but the idea is to ultimately move over to LED.
Correct. Okay, motion to open up for public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any members of the public have questions or comments regarding ordinance number 2021-010?
I am not seeing any comments, Mayor.
All right, motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote, Mr. Stevens.
Wait, no, we need a motion
One
to
more.
approve.
I'm moving along.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Ms. Moreski. Aye. Ms. Fernandez. And Mayor Jacobs.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance number 2021-012, an ordinance amending section 3-6.3 entitled Park and Recreation Area Rules and creating section 3-20 entitled Prohibition on the Public Consumption of Cannabis of Chapter 3 entitled Police Regulations of the Revised General Ordinance of the Township of Bedminster. May we have a motion to open the public hearing for this ordinance?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's turn to John Bellardo. John.
Mayor and Township Committee, how are you this evening?
Good, how are you, John?
Fine.
All right, John, why don't you walk us, well, I guess maybe you and the chief walk us through this ordinance?
First of all, I've obviously been here all night remotely, and I did hear various comments from members of the public inquiring as to whether this ordinance would impact the use of medical marijuana. And I can affirmatively say that it does not in any way regulate medical marijuana. Cannabis, as defined in this ordinance, has the same definition that was enacted earlier this year by the legislature and Governor Murphy in Public Law 2021, Chapter 16. And if you look at the text of the definition of cannabis there, it is very explicit in indicating that it does not include medical cannabis dispensed to registered qualifying patients pursuant to the Jake Honig Compassionate Use Medical Act, and then it indicates what that act is by public law and statute number. So again, this ordinance that prohibits cannabis and marijuana use applies to cannabis as that was defined in the newly enacted ordinances for purposes of zoning. And of course, as Chief Rock will also affirm, it reemphasizes that the use of illegal marijuana, not, for example, cannabis that has been delivered to you legally or that you have had possession of pursuant to legal means, such as delivery to your house or purchasing at a cannabis dispensary, is also prohibited. So again, medical marijuana is not prohibited. It's not impacted by this ordinance. This ordinance does indicate that no person shall engage in the smoking, vaping, aerosolizing, or consumption of cannabis and marijuana by any other means in any park or recreation area in the township. So those will be prohibited. It also further indicates at a new section 3-20 that no person shall engage in the smoking, vaping, aerosolizing, or consumption of cannabis and marijuana by any other means in a public place. Public place is defined as any place to which the public has access that is not privately owned, or any place to which the public has access, including, but not limited to, a public street, roadway, thoroughfare, sidewalk, bridge, alley, plaza, park, playground, swimming pool, shopping area, public transportation facility, vehicle used for public transportation, parking lot, public library, or any other public building, structure, or area. It does not regulate the use of cannabis, legal cannabis, in private areas. So, for example, we've had questions that have come up as to whether this ordinance would impact cannabis in our planned unit developments, such as the Hills or any other developments that are private places, private parking lots, private common space. It does not. It is up to those particular entities, whether it be the master or village associations, to regulate cannabis. And lastly, in keeping in the spirit of decriminalization that the legislature and government did in enacting the recent cannabis legislation, the fine for violating this ordinance is not in any means a criminal fine. It is simply a civil penalty of up to $200. So it is not a large penalty, but there is a minor penalty, for example, smoking illegal marijuana in River Road Park. So that's the sum and substance of it. I'll defer to Chief Rock if he has any other comments or wishes to add to that, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions on the ordinance that is up for adoption tonight.
John, can you just clarify? I heard you say that the ordinance does not affect medical marijuana, but it does prohibit consumption of marijuana in a public place. So just to be clear, if I had a, I don't know, license or whatever it is, a prescription to acquire medical cannabis, it still does not, I still cannot consume that in public, correct?
No, this ordinance does not prohibit that.
So how does the police officer, how do we dovetail that versus like HIPAA, right? I mean, is you required to ask for someone to see their medical license?
One would have to seemingly ask for that or a person would show it. Again, one would hope that someone that has a license to use medical marijuana exercises discretion. And for example, if they decide to smoke or vape that, they would do that in the privacy of their home rather than in a public place. So.
Chief?
No, but just to echo what Mr. Bellardo just ended with, that, yeah, you know, our profession gives you discretion. So every situation you have to look at and examine all the facts before you render a decision on how you're going to combat that. And, if somebody in past experience, medical marijuana cards have been, issued to citizens, we've come in contact with that. And, most of them freely show you their medical marijuana card. So I'd expect the same thing, that if somebody needs it because they have a medical condition and they're out in the public and they need to medicate themselves, that, they're going to produce the card or let us know that they have a medical reason that they're ingesting marijuana.
I agree with Chief Rock's statement there.
Is there a separate, whether it's dispensaries, you're still going to have medical marijuana dispensaries separate and apart from recreational dispensaries?
That's my understanding, yes.
So the procurement of medical marijuana is a different procurement from recreational cannabis.
As many of you have indicated, the commission is in the process of adopting regulations. Now, whether those final regulations would permit the intermixing of recreation and medical marijuana remains to be seen. We don't know yet until those final regulations are issued. There are certain states in the country where the medical dispensaries are separate and apart from the recreational dispensaries, and the legislature in those states have decided to keep a wall in place. So, for example, in the state of Maine, a medical dispensary is separate and apart from a recreational dispensary, and you will often see a green cross sign indicating this is a medical dispensary as opposed to a recreational cannabis dispensary.
John, where's in the ordinance, where's the carve out so folks know that if they have medical, that they're not subject to this?
The carve out is that the fact that cannabis, as defined by the state legislature, does not include medical cannabis dispensed to a registered qualifying patient pursuant to the J. Conant Compassionate Use Medical Act. If the committee was inclined to add express language that it excludes cannabis and add that language, we could do so. And come back on July 6th with that express language indicating that it does not include medical cannabis.
Right. All I'm looking forward to is avoidance of a problem. Someone who has a license says, "Hey."
Let me take the other side of that. So, John, I'll take you on your word that medical marijuana can be consumed anywhere. So that means in a park, that the aerosolization, so smoking medical marijuana at a park is fine.
Let me take that.
We don't allow, we don't have cigarettes in our parks.
I mean, exactly.
It would be up to you as a governing body if you wanted to go the extra yard to prohibit that. And certainly we would do further research under the medical cannabis statute to see if there's any language in there that prohibits public consumption. But that is something, if you wanted us to look further into, we would have to carry this ordinance.
One, I guess, concern would be that I listen to the radio every day, and on the radio every day, what's the station I listen to? I don't know. They guarantee you call the
Yes,
number,
right.
you get a doctor.
I've heard the same ad.
Medical marijuana permits. So I mean, basically anybody can get it. They're guaranteeing it. They say we guarantee you will get approved to get a prescription for medical marijuana. So that would just mean anyone then could get it, and that anyone could then smoke marijuana in our parks. And it would not be criminalized, which is what we want. We don't want it criminalized, right? But there's an intoxication factor that I don't know that we want everyone, at a park smoking marijuana and being intoxicated in public, right? So I think that's something that we really have to kind of drill down on, because ultimately people are going to find a loophole, right? If they want to smoke and they want this little medical marijuana permit or whatever you get, I don't know, card, I'm sure that they'll be able to find it. So that's just something to take into consideration, right? We have to look at all of our residents. So it's who smoke medical marijuana, the ones who can get a medical marijuana permit. It's announced on the radio. I don't know if everything you hear on the radio is true, right? Like everything you read on the internet. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. But that being said, we do have all of our residents think about families with little children. Do they want people intoxicated at the park? That's all. It's just something to think about. Both sides of it. People are sure and smoke, but there's an intoxication factor, and there are people that
And then there's the smoking element, separate and apart from the intoxication. Is just
right.
So that's just something.
I was a bit more out there than that. I think you're more, closer to the reality of what we would probably deal with. I'm talking about someone who's got a medical, I don't know, what's a license? I don't know. Permit.
It's a prescription.
They've got a card to purchase and consume, and then they look at our ordinance and they say, well, you can't do that. That's against the law. I don't want to deal with having to fight over the constitutionality of what we're doing here. So if the intention is that that's a loophole, do we want to say it? Or do we not? I mean, that's my issue.
Well, I think the issue I'm hearing from Committeewoman Fernandez is that it would be her inclination to amend this ordinance to prohibit the consumption of medical marijuana in public places, and we would do further research on that. And I think what I'm hearing from Committeeman Stevenson is he wants to, and again, both of you could tell me if I'm misinterpreting your statements, he wants to specifically point out that consumption of medical marijuana in a public place is not prohibited by this ordinance.
So I'm not saying that I want to have it prohibited. I'm just saying that essentially anyone will be able to get a medical marijuana prescription according to what I'm hearing on the radio. So that is take into consideration. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that I want to prohibit it or not. I'm just saying that that's something to take into consideration.
Although conceptually, with legalized recreational marijuana, you wouldn't need the card. And I've heard that same ad, and I thought the same thing. Like, really? So if anyone is guaranteed to get the prescription, to get the card, call this number. We guarantee you a doctor will issue you that card, right? That sort of, honestly, to some extent, diminishes the benefits and really the validity of medicinal or medical marijuana in the first place by making it so accessible and essentially turning the prescription into a farce. But at the same time, with the legalization of recreational, do you really need to even bother going through a doctor? You won't really need it. I guess the only issue is in public consumption. And to me, I look at it from a smoking standpoint, and which is, I would focus on the aerosolization within the public parks. And from my perspective, perhaps not as much as the other consumption methods.
Look, I'll confess, I didn't know until 5 minutes ago that there was a carve out for medical. I thought it was covered within the ordinance, to be honest with you. So it was news to me to hear that, no, if you have medical, you're outside of this. And that's why I was sort of looking through it saying, well, where does it say that? I always thought that we were just passing this ordinance that would apply vis-a-vis the product. And if you have a medical license, great, you can go to your dispensary, but you're still not going to consume it in public. But if that's not what this is doing, then maybe we need to be express about it. Or alternatively, if we want to say, well, let's look into it and see if we can.
Well, we've got it. So either we have an ordinance before us, we can give direction to John to revise, but frankly, it doesn't sound like we have, well, perhaps we need some legal advice from John, whether or not, John, your thought that medical marijuana cannot be restricted in public settings.
I have to look further into that. I don't have the medical marijuana statute memorized by heart, so I would have to go back and look at that.
Yet they're ready to pass a law tonight on it.
I might recall that when we looked at this from a zoning perspective, there was questions from both myself and my office as to whether you wanted to prohibit medical marijuana uses expressly in the zoning ordinance, and there was a decision not to at that time because they were not covered by the opt-out act. So,
correct.
So you're sort of dovetailing into the same issue here. Do you want to prohibit public use of medical cannabis? And then I would defer to Chief Rock. I think, as the mayor said, is someone that's obtaining it from a medical standpoint for medical reasons more likely to decide, I'm going to smoke this in the park because I'm treating my cancer? Or is someone that is illegally smoking marijuana more likely to smoke in a park? And I'll defer to Chief Rock, but I think probably the probability that an illegal user would smoke in public is much greater than someone impacted by a medical condition such as cannabis. But all of these things, of course, are policy decisions that you have.
What's an illegal user?
Grapple with and decide what you want to do in terms of your final ordinance.
But I do think that we need that legal, right now we need to know, does state law restrict municipalities from from further restricting medical marijuana in public settings, or the consumption of medical marijuana in public settings?
Is medical marijuana, medicinal marijuana is legal, right? It is legal.
Yes.
It was already legal, right?
Yes.
So, and has that been what we've seen? Have we seen trends of people smoking medicinal marijuana in public? Has it been prohibited prior to this? I mean, I guess all smoking in parks are prohibited, right? So was that already prohibited? I mean, was it already allowed and it's just not happening? I mean, it's kind of
maybe John knows.
Chief would know.
Yeah.
Chief knows.
Chief can opine as to the incidence of medical marijuana or even regular marijuana use in public places, and whether it has been a problem, something common or not common.
Correct. So I can't recall a time when we've responded to a call, say somebody's walking in the Hills Village Shopping Center, and somebody called to say, hey, by the way, somebody's walking down the sidewalk smoking marijuana. So I don't think the frequency of it, exists. So, do people with a medical marijuana card, maybe it's covered by a state statute that said you can't do it outside, or they just do it in the confines of their own private area.
They don't know, but they're going to pass a law, but they don't know.
Thus far, with legal medicinal marijuana, it's a non-issue. People aren't doing it. So.
I'm sorry?
So now this question is, can we restrict public consumption? Look, but if you have medical, marijuana, can you smoke and drive at the same time? I
mean,
would
you
probably
can.
hazard. You
But you're
can,
probably
but
not
is that-
supposed to.
But is
Probably not a
that,
good
yeah,
idea.
is that legal?
I would say as long as you're not under the influence and you can operate a motor vehicle without impairment, you can. Just like, if you have a drink or two of alcohol, you have to meet that threshold of impairment and operation in order to be held accountable under the traffic statutes.
But we did hear, and this was with Melissa and Fuad's presentation, that driving and consuming at the same time is still not legal.
Correct.
Correct.
But it's not a DUI offense.
So I'm just saying that as it stands right now, it's saying medicinal marijuana, that recreational use of marijuana is prohibited in parks, and that medicinal is an exception, right? That's
That's not what it says.
That's not what it says.
It says that you can't do it, period. So there's no, it doesn't distinguish between medical and non. That's why I'm getting turned around.
See, I'm looking at all the smoking, vaping, and aerosolizing as equally bad for the other people standing behind you.
Right.
Whether it's medical or recreational, it's not good for the
Secondhand.
people around you. Secondhand smoke's terrible.
Right.
Secondhand vaping is even worse. So whether it's, to me, it doesn't matter whether it's recreational or medical. And
Right, that's what I'm saying, we have to
So-
think of all of our residents, but also if it's already legal to do and it's not being done, it's not necessarily an issue. And if it's, to make the exception for medical marijuana.
So the two parts of the ordinance, the first one is regards the parks, and then the second part regards public places. So I just want to be clear. So
So public places, I had another question about that, I'm sorry. I have other questions about this. It's very new, some guidance from the state would be phenomenal.
And that's what we're
But,
waiting for.
So say that, I'm just gonna give you an example, we have this like great siren, right? And people, it's outdoors and somebody wants to smoke recreational marijuana. It's like, is that legal? Based on this,
That's private property.
is it private or is it public?
You cannot smoke cannabis under this ordinance is defined by reference to the state statute. Cannabis does not include medical cannabis, as I've indicated. So medical cannabis
John,
in
where are
a
you
public place.
Sorry to interrupt you. Where are you reading from?
Because if you have to go look, Committeeman Stevenson, at the definition of cannabis, it would be simply by reference to the state statute, which excludes it under the new law.
Medicinal use, just like.
So Doug, being a lawyer, is looking at provision S, consumption of cannabis and marijuana, is looking to tie it back to a definition in that ordinance. And the only definition, John, that you're referring back to is the state definition.
Yes, if you wanted to add bells and whistles, we could add a definition for cannabis that simply repeats the definition in the state statute. And I read you that definition before that excludes medical cannabis dispensed to registered qualifying patients pursuant to the Jake Honig Compassionate Use Medical Act.
I just think we got to do something to tighten that up so that folks who have the medical license aren't confused and think that we've done something that prevents them and it's illegal and lawful and we have to deal with that legal.
Unless that's what
Unless
we intend.
unless
that's
we
what
intend to do it, right, but
No,
right.
I don't think that.
But I'm hearing from council that the intent of the ordinance is not to address that. So
It's not the intent, it doesn't address that. So
Well-
I agree with Committeeman Stevenson, and I don't think it would, again, depending upon what you want to do. But if you wanted to put bells and whistles on it, we don't have to adopt this tonight. We're under no rush. This isn't a zoning ordinance. This is a public health and safety ordinance. I could tighten it up by adding a definition of cannabis. That would be simple to do. And
So one is I do, as another lawyer, I do want the definition in there. But then I also want to know whether or not public consumption of medical or medicinal marijuana can be restricted.
put that on the table.
And we can do that and get back to you relatively shortly with that.
All right, so John, are we all in agreement that's the direction to John? Yes,
I'm in
yes,
agreement,
yes.
yes.
Colin?
Yes.
Okay, so John, that means we are going to table the ordinance tonight, continue for the next township committee meeting.
Did you want to ask if Lefty had a question? That
No.
might, okay.
The only thing I will advise, if you do decide that you want to prohibit medical cannabis, that's a substantive change that would require a reintroduction. Again, not a huge deal. It's something that you would just have to further reintroduce and then schedule for another public hearing.
And this, we've got the two out there, right? The one's being referred to the planning board for an opinion that's not inconsistent with the master plan, and then we have this one.
Correct.
This, are we under is this subject to that August?
No,
This is
the license.
Yeah, that's for licensing. That's a zoning issue. That's for citing businesses.
Right. So
this is for consumption in our public parks
Right.
and public places.
Right. So in other words, if we had to,
We could do this
renotice,
next year. We could do this 3
Perfect.
years from now. We could never do it.
Yeah, look, I think we should know that information before we.
You have plenty of time, and it'll be simple enough for my office to go back and get you that information. And I think that's probably the better thing to do at this particular point.
So that would involve a reintroduction. So that means we will not have a public hearing on this ordinance at our next township committee meeting, but most likely August.
No, let me stop you there.
Says that you can't do it, and you only have to do it the way it's drafted. And then
Right. Right
Oh,
now.
but then we need to know.
Right.
Right.
We're conditionally tabling. We may have to reintroduce it if we decide to go the extra step.
I still want to speak.
I take a different position. I would say that as your initial read, because you've got, John, are cannabis and marijuana defined similarly? Because marijuana is essentially the hashish and the non-legal purchases of cannabis. So they're
the reason we have prohibited cannabis is because cannabis has been made legal by the legislature. The definition of cannabis made legal by the legislature excludes illegal marijuana.
Okay, so in that provision S, you've got consumption of cannabis and marijuana. So you're attacking that ordinance, the way it's drafted, is attacking the consumption of whether it's legally purchased cannabis or illegally purchased marijuana. It's really attacking the consumption in the public parks.
Yes.
Okay. So medical marijuana is excluded from the definition of cannabis at the state level.
Correct.
And is excluded from the definition of marijuana, which is illegally purchased cannabis. So then right now, medical would appear to fall completely out once those definitions are defined or fine-tuned to reflect that.
Right. So for example, if you decided at the next meeting, I came back, and if you decided the next meeting you wanted to permit or continue to permit medical marijuana, and you just wanted to point out by adding the definition that medical marijuana is excluded from cannabis, that's not substantive, because this ordinance already says medical marijuana is excluded. But if you decide you want to go a step further, if permitted, and ban medical marijuana in parks and public settings, that's substantive.
I would rather have a discussion and reintroduce.
That's fine too.
Yeah, I would rather have that discussion and then bring it back for an introduction and another public hearing.
That's fine. So you're tabling, which means you don't need to have a public hearing tonight if you choose to do that. And we'll simply come back at the next meeting with further advice.
That's my thought.
That's
Doug?
fine.
Yeah, Gina?
I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I would like more information on the medical versus recreational.
We're just defining,
I mean, the answer very well could be, sorry, you can't do it, right? So then our decision's made for us, but we
Right.
need to know.
Colin, are you in agreement?
Yeah, and I also, just to tee on to what Doug said, when I look back at our Board of Health resolution, they specifically call out both medicinal and recreational as prohibiting them in any public space. So at least that's a recommendation coming from our own Board of Health. So if we do have the opportunity to do it, then we have to take it under consideration, given the input from some of our experts.
Okay, so we will table the public hearing.
You need a motion, Mayor, just to be.
No, I'm just going through it, that we would table this. We would have a subsequent discussion and then perhaps a reintroduction sometime, once again, most likely sometime in August.
Right.
Okay, we have a motion to table the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Gotta be kidding
All in
me.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so for.
Why
let's
wouldn't
see,
they
get
want
my
some
notes
public
out
input on
here.
what they're what they're confused about? We can actually help them in the situation here.
Mr. Grimes and Mr. King, we will not be having the public hearing because we will not be taking action on this ordinance tonight. So you can follow Bedminster Township and see the next time that this police ordinance comes up for discussion, for introduction, and subsequently for public hearing.
Will there be more public comment later in the meeting?
No.
Because I have light to shit on this situation.
No.
I could help you with this situation, actually.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much. But
Well, I know a lot about this.
that's what our attorneys are for. And let's move on.
You have a 14th
to
Amendment violation.
resolutions.
You have a 14th Amendment violation, and that's what your attorney's for?
We have 10 resolutions.
Are you shitting me right now?
Okay,
We have nothing on the consent.
You've got to be kidding me.
sorry, that's my fault.
You've got to be shitting me right now. I can't
Right,
believe that just
resolutions 2021-082.
happened. I am shocked right now.
This resolution authorizes the insertion of a special item of revenue. and
They
insertion
shut
of
us
an item
down,
of
and I tried to
appropriation
speak
for
about
equal
this in the
amount
beginning. They shut me
2021
down.
budget
I
to
have
include
liked to
funding
shit on
for
this
the
issue.
2021.
They don't even want to hear from us. They don't even want to hear from
Right,
us.
so this is what's called the
Chapter
chapter.
159, when we didn't have the
These people
funding available during our budget
Are
preparation, so
unbelievable.
this
They
is
could have
back
waited till
to
after
us.
we
It's
spoke to
take money
table it,
into our budget.
to get some input from us, to get some
Any
information.
questions or comments?
They're ignorant.
Seeing none,
They
Mayor,
are
the motion to
super,
approve resolution
super
2021.
ignorant.
So moved.
And they don't want to be educated.
Roll call vote.
We could educate them. I have a lot to tell them. First of all, as a medical cannabis patient, we can't use cannabis in a park, a recreational area, or a school. My question is the definition of consumption. Consumption, smoking, putting lotion on your skin is the same thing. So you're banning lotion, you're banning tincture, you're banning edibles.
This is
What are your
the,
police supposed to
first time
do?
we're actually
Run around and
thinking,
check edibles all day and see who's a
fair
patient?
housing
Because if I'm a
TPA.
patient, I'm
just
coming
wanted
to your
make you
town.
aware of
And
that.
if you ask me where my card is, I'm not asking
This
questions.
is
I'm not
done
answering questions.
through, the DLGS.
I'm not going to answer your
And
questions.
Sarah's in,
You go through the
she's
rigmarole of calling
in
the state
process
police
to
and spend an
take
hour or
class
two
work,
on
take
me.
that course for
Spend an hour or
Okay.
two on me.
All
And
she
then we'll have a
needs to
bunch
do
of
now is
patients
take the
doing
exam,
this.
which she will be
And you'll be
doing,
spending days
later this fall.
figuring out what the heck you're doing in
Any
that
other
town
questions or
with your
comments?
nanny state.
Only comment is I would just
I'm
say that
disgusted
all
right
land
now.
interactions
I
with
wanted to
Sarah are
speak.
excellent. She's been
I wanted
very,
to
very good.
educate them because they need
Happy to see
education
how they
and they don't want to be
move on.
educated. I tried to speak about this in the beginning.
The motion to approve.
And they wouldn't. This is ridiculous. They could have heard from us at least. They could have heard from three experts, three patients that are suffering, three people that have seen other patients suffering,
Ms. Fernandez?
three people that know what's going on.
Aye. Resolution 2021-084.
They don't want to hear from us. They have lawyers that know what they're
This
doing.
resolution
Well, you have a
sets the
14th Amendment
employee
violation, so your
salaries
lawyer
effective
should be kicked out of New
January 1,
Jersey.
2021.
14th
Ms.
Amendment
Wright?
violation.
Okay, sure. So this
Two
is
people
a
doing the
standard
same thing.
resolution that we
One's
do
lawful,
every
one's
year,
not.
and
That's a
this is
14th
based
Amendment
on,
violation.
The 2% increase.
That goes
for,
back for
staff
many
across
different
the
issues.
board,
Rosa
and it
Parks, for
makes it
one.
Retroactive to January 1st.
Okay, so
You got
this is
two people
for
doing the same
all,
thing. One's lawful,
all
one's
the
not.
Positions, weren't we still?
That goes back to civil rights. It goes back to human rights.
DPW salaries?
We took
Two
care of
people
that.
doing the
Okay.
same thing.
So we went
One's
through the
lawful,
first
one's
two.
not.
We had passed two resolutions.
You gotta be kidding me.
For 20.
All right, I'm done.
And then 2020.
Crickets
and
is
then
right,
set
Chucky.
salary for 2021
Those
to
crickets,
make
I'm
it
hearing them
concurrent.
chirp.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions or comments?
All right, I gotta go. I'm disgusted.
Seeing none, may we have a motion to approve
See
resolution
y'all
2021-084?
Meeting.
So,
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady in the glow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.